July 19th, 1848, a sweltering summer morning in Seneca Falls, New York, where the air hangs heavy with the scent of blooming lilacs and the distant rumble of wagons on dirt roads. Inside the Wesleyan Methodist Chapel, a modest brick building with whitewashed walls and wooden pews, over 200 people gather, their faces flushed from the 90-degree heat. Women in calico dresses and bonnets fill the seats, while men stand at the back or along the sides. At the front, Lucretia Mott, a 55-year-old Quaker abolitionist with a serene yet commanding presence, opens the proceedings with a prayer. Beside her, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, 32, a sharp-witted mother of three, steps forward to read the Declaration of Sentiments, a bold manifesto modeled on the Declaration of Independence, proclaiming, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal." Murmurs ripple through the crowd as Stanton lists grievances against men's tyranny over women: denial of voting rights, property laws favoring husbands, exclusion from professions and education. Over 2 days, debates rage, resolutions pass, and 100 attendees, 68 women and 32 men, sign the document. Frederick Douglass, the escaped slave and eloquent orator, champions the most controversial plank: women's right to vote. This is no quiet assembly. It's the Seneca Falls Convention, the first women's rights convention in the United States. A spark that ignites the women's suffrage movement and challenges centuries of patriarchal control, culminating in the 19th Amendment 72 years later. Welcome to Vestige Files, where we unearth the pivotal moments that shaped history. This is the story of the women's suffrage movement and the Seneca Falls Convention, a saga of perseverance, protest, and progress that shattered barriers and redefined equality for half the world's population. To understand this groundbreaking gathering, we must rewind to the early 19th century, when American women navigated a landscape of legal subjugation and emerging reform amid the young republic's ideals of liberty. In the decades following the American Revolution, the United States grappled with its founding principles of freedom and equality. Yet women remained ensnared in a web of patriarchal laws rooted in English common law. The Declaration of Independence in 1776 asserted that all men are created equal, but women were excluded from this vision. Married women, under the doctrine of coverture articulated by William Blackstone in his 1765 Commentaries on the Laws of England, lost independent legal identity upon marriage. Their property, earnings, and even children belonged to their husbands. Widows fared slightly better, but single women faced societal pressures to marry. Divorce was rare and stigmatized, often requiring legislative acts, and custody typically went to fathers. Education for girls was limited to domestic skills like sewing and reading, with few opportunities beyond primary levels. Oberlin College became the first coeducational institution in 1837, but such access was exceptional. Politically, women were voiceless. No voting rights, no jury service, no public office. Abigail Adams, in her 1776 letter to husband John Adams during the Continental Congress, urged him to remember the ladies and avoid putting unlimited power in husband's hands, warning, "We are determined to foment a rebellion." John dismissed it playfully, but her words foreshadowed unrest. The early 1800s saw stirrings of change amid religious and social revivals. The Second Great Awakening, sweeping from the 1790s through the 1840s, emphasized personal salvation and social reform, drawing women into public roles. Evangelical movements like Methodism and baptism allowed women to testify and pray aloud, challenging traditional silence. Temperance campaigns addressing alcohol's ravages on families mobilized women. The American Temperance Society formed in 1826, evolving into the Woman's Christian Temperance Union in 1874 under Frances Willard. But the abolitionist movement proved the crucible for women's rights. Slavery's horrors, with 2.5 million enslaved by 1840, galvanized activists. William Lloyd Garrison founded the American Anti-Slavery Society in 1833, advocating immediate emancipation and welcoming women. Unlike the more conservative American Colonization Society, women formed auxiliaries. The Philadelphia Female Anti-Slavery Society in 1833 led by Lucretia Mott, a Nantucket-born Quaker minister known for her eloquent speeches against slavery since the 1820s. Mott, born in 1793, married James Mott in 1811 and became a recorded minister, traveling widely. Her encounters with discrimination fueled advocacy. Angelina and Sarah Grimke, South Carolina sisters who abandoned their slaveholding roots, spoke publicly from 1837. Angelina's Appeal to the Christian Women of the South, 1836, urged action, but their lectures drew clerical backlash for women speaking to mixed audiences. The pastoral letter from Massachusetts clergy in 1837 condemned such promiscuous speaking as unfeminine. Yet the Grimkes persisted, with Sarah's Letters on the Equality of the Sexes, 1838, arguing theological equality. Sojourner Truth, born Isabella Baumfree around 1797 into slavery in New York, escaped in 1826, won her son's freedom in court in 1828, the first black woman to do so against a white man, and became a traveling preacher, her deep voice commanding audiences. The transatlantic abolition circuit connected reformers. In 1840, at the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London, American women delegates like Mott and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, newlywed to abolitionist Henry Brewster Stanton, were barred from participating, forced to sit in a curtain gallery. This indignity bonded Mott and Stanton. During walks in London, they resolved to hold a women's rights convention upon return. Stanton, born in 1815 in Johnstown, New York, to a prominent judge, studied at Emma Willard's Troy Female Seminary, absorbing law from her father's books but barred from college. Married in 1840, she omitted obey from vows, signaling independence. Back in the U.S., the Stantons moved to Seneca Falls in 1847, where Elizabeth's isolation as a mother amplified frustrations. Local networks in upstate New York, a hotbed of reform known as the Burned-Over District for revivalist fervor, facilitated action. Quakers like Jane Hunt, born in 1812, hosted gatherings in Waterloo. Her home became the planning site. Mary Ann McClintock, a Quaker activist, and her husband Thomas hosted drafting sessions. Martha Coffin Wright, Mott's sister, born in 1806, joined despite pregnancy. These women, connected through Quaker meetings and abolition, seized the moment when Mott visited Waterloo in July 1848. On July 9, 1848, at Hunt's tea table, Stanton poured out grievances, legal disabilities, educational barriers, exclusion from trades. The group decided on a convention, advertising in the Seneca County Courier on July 11th for July 19th to 20th at the Wesleyan Chapel, chosen for its anti-slavery stance, having seceded from Methodists over slavery. A preparatory meeting at the McClintocks on July 16th drafted the declaration using a parlor table, now preserved. The convention opened amid anticipation and uncertainty. On July 19th, the first day designated for women only, about 200 attendees arrived, far exceeding expectations, including 40 men who insisted on participating. Lucretia Mott, presiding with poise, allowed men to stay but remain silent. Her husband, James Mott, a supportive cloth merchant born in 1788, chaired the following day. Elizabeth Cady Stanton delivered the opening address, articulating women's degraded status and calling for upliftment. The Declaration of Sentiments was read, its preamble boldly amending, "All men are created equal," to include women, followed by 18 grievances paralleling those against King George III. Men withholding elective franchise, compelling obedience to unrepresentative laws, denying property rights, monopolizing profitable employments, closing colleges and professions, degrading women's self-confidence. Debate ensued. The document's tone, accusing men of usurpations, drew concern for being too aggressive. But supporters like Mott argued truth demanded candor. Revisions softened some language, but the core remained. The 11 resolutions followed, demanding equal rights in education, trades, professions, affirming women's duty to secure the vote, rejecting double moral standards. The 9th resolution, added by Stanton, sparked fierce contention. Resolved that it is the duty of the women of this country to secure to themselves their sacred right to the elective franchise. Many, including Mott, feared it would ridicule the proceedings. Women's suffrage seemed radical, even to reformers focused on property and education. Stanton defended it passionately, asserting political power was essential to influence laws affecting women. Frederick Douglass, 30, publisher of the North Star anti-slavery newspaper since 1847, rose in support. Born into slavery around 1818 in Maryland, he escaped in 1838, becoming a leading abolitionist with his 1845 autobiography. Living in nearby Rochester, he attended after seeing the advertisement. Douglass argued eloquently, as a black man denied rights, he could not claim them while excluding women. The world needed women's moral and intellectual force. His speech swayed the assembly. The resolution passed narrowly. A 12th resolution, added by Mott, urged joint efforts by men and women to advance the cause. Evening sessions featured speeches, Mott on women's capabilities, Stanton on legal inequities, Ansel Bascom, a local politician, on recent property laws, though he noted limitations. On July 20th, the crowd swelled to 300. James Mott chaired. The declaration was reread and adopted unanimously. Resolutions passed, with suffrage again debated but affirmed. Signing began. Mott first among women, Douglass among men. Charlotte Woodward, a 19-year-old glovemaker, signed, the only attendee to live to vote in 1920. Opposition loomed. Local ministers condemned it in sermons July 23rd, refusing rebuttals. Newspapers mocked. The Oneida Whig called it the most shocking and unnatural event ever recorded in the history of humanity. The Philadelphia Public Ledger deemed it a farce. Yet positive coverage emerged. Horace Greeley's New York Tribune supported suffrage as a natural right. Douglass's North Star praised it as the grand basis for attaining the rights of women. Immediate backlash tested resolve. Some signers withdrew names amid ridicule. Stanton faced family criticism, but momentum built. 2 weeks later, the Rochester Women's Rights Convention, August 2, 1848, at the Unitarian Church drew 150 to 300. Organized by the same group plus Amy Post, a Quaker abolitionist born in 1802, it elected Abigail Bush as president, the first woman to chair a public meeting with men present, over Mott's initial objections. Resolutions echoed Seneca Falls, adding calls for equal pay and property rights. The movement spread. In 1850, the first National Women's Rights Convention in Worcester, Massachusetts, drew over 1,000, organized by Paulina Wright Davis and Lucy Stone, a Oberlin graduate born in 1818, known for keeping her name upon marriage. Stone's lectures from 1847 onward galvanized. At Worcester, she declared, "We want to be something more than the ladies of creation." International attendees like William Lloyd Garrison spoke. Annual national conventions followed until 1860, addressing dress reform. Amelia Bloomer popularized bloomers in 1851, and education. Seneca Falls ignited a sustained campaign, but progress was glacial amid societal resistance. The 1850s saw state-level pushes. New York expanded married women's property rights in 1860. Susan B. Anthony, born in 1820 to Quaker parents, joined after meeting Stanton in 1851. A tireless organizer from Rochester, Anthony managed logistics while Stanton drafted speeches. Their partnership drove the movement. Anthony's 1852 address to the New York Sons of Temperance, denied for her gender, spurred formation of the Woman's State Temperance Society. The Civil War, 1861 to 1865, paused conventions. Women supported the Union via the Women's Loyal National League, petitioning for the 13th Amendment abolishing slavery, ratified 1865. Post-war, the 14th Amendment, 1868, defined citizenship with male voting protections, and the 15th, 1870, enfranchised black men, dividing activists. Stanton and Anthony opposed, fearing women's exclusion. Their racist rhetoric alienated allies like Douglass, who at the 1869 American Equal Rights Association meeting argued black men's needs were more urgent. The split birthed two groups, Stanton's and Anthony's National Woman Suffrage Association, NWSA, in 1869, focusing on federal amendment, Lucy Stone's and Henry Blackwell's American Woman Suffrage Association, AWSA, emphasized state campaigns. State victories trickled. Wyoming Territory granted women's suffrage in 1869, Utah in 1870, revoked 1887, restored 1896. Anthony's 1872 voting attempt in Rochester led to arrest and trial in 1873. Fined $100 she never paid. Victoria Woodhull, born in 1838, a spiritualist and stockbroker, ran for president in 1872 with Douglas as VP without his consent, highlighting suffrage. The 1878 Anthony Amendment, introduced by Senator Aaron Sargent, languished until becoming the 19th. Reunification in 1890 formed the National American Woman Suffrage Association, NAWSA, led by Stanton, then Anthony, then Carrie Chapman Catt, born in 1859, a strategic organizer. The new generation included Alice Paul, born in 1885 to Quakers, educated in England where she joined Emmeline Pankhurst's militant suffragettes. Returning in 1910, Paul organized NAWSA's Congressional Committee, staging the 1913 woman suffrage procession in Washington, D.C., 8,000 marchers on Pennsylvania Avenue, disrupted by hostile crowds but gaining publicity. Paul's militancy clashed with Catt's gradualism. In 1916, Paul formed the National Woman's Party, NWP. Their 1917 Silent Sentinels picketed the White House amid World War I. Banners reading, "Mr. President, how long must women wait for liberty?" Arrests followed. Paul sentenced to 7 months, force-fed during hunger strikes. Public outrage grew. President Woodrow Wilson, initially opposed, endorsed suffrage in 1918 as a war measure. NAWSA's state campaign succeeded. By 1919, 15 states had full suffrage. The 19th Amendment passed Congress May 21, 1919 House, June 4 Senate. Ratified August 18, 1920, by Tennessee's decisive vote, young legislator Harry Burns switched after his mother's plea. It stated, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." Yet resolution was incomplete. Black women faced Jim Crow barriers. Native and Asian women waited longer. Ida B. Wells, born in 1862 into slavery, founded the Alpha Suffrage Club in 1913 for black women, marching in 1913 despite segregation attempts. The movement's racism, Stanton and Anthony's exclusionary tactics, left scars. Globally, Seneca Falls inspired. New Zealand granted women's vote in 1893, Australia 1902, Britain 1918, full 1928. The UN's 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights echoed equality. In the U.S., the Equal Rights Amendment, proposed 1923 by Paul, remains unratified. Human legacies endure. Stanton died 1902, Anthony 1906. Neither voted. Mott passed 1880, Stone 1893, Truth Around 1883. Their efforts paved for Title IX, 1972, Voting Rights Act, 1965. Extensions. Seneca Falls is now Women's Rights National Historical Park, established 1980. The women's suffrage movement and Seneca Falls Convention transformed subjugation into empowerment, proving persistent advocacy could bend history. Stanton, Mott, Anthony, their resolve showed equality's fight demands unity. Was Seneca Falls a radical spark for universal rights, or a limited step shadowed by exclusions? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this journey from silence to suffrage empowered you, hit that like button, subscribe to Vestige Files, and ring the bell for more stories of history's turning points.